I'm Gil Porter. I'm a local history writer in Kokomo, Indiana. I'm here today along the banks of the Wildcat Creek in Kokomo to commemorate the 175th anniversary of Howard County. The Kokomo Early History Learning Center and the Howard County Historical Society have discovered a new story about Kokomo and Howard County, and we'd like to share that with you now.
The Miami Indians signed 6 treaties with the United States before Indiana became a state in 1816, and 6 more treaties after that, losing less and less of their homeland each time. The result of the 1818 Treaty of St. Mary's was the northward expansion of the state of Indiana, a state formed entirely from south to north from Indian treaties. With the new purchase, Indiana expanded from the Ohio River to the Wabash. It led to 35 new counties, a new state capital centrally located in Indianapolis, and the designation of 760,000 acres of wilderness set aside for the Miami Indian tribe. The Big Miami Reserve touched 7 existing counties and included in its interior all of present-day Howard County. For hundreds of years, Indians have lived along the Wabash, hunting and fishing and raising their families. The Miami were practicing agriculture long before contact with the Europeans. They were a settled, self-determining society. This map illustrates Indian presence all along the Wabash Valley. The Miami Reservation included a wide array of habitats that supported a range of lifestyles. Many of the locations noted on this map were fixed villages with log cabins and brick buildings. Indian farms featured wood-framed structures and barns. By the 1830s, the Miami were a settled culture with an evolving economy, but another economy was about to supplant this adaptive society. The hunger for agriculture, the thirst for canal lands, and the thunder of the railroads was about to drive a spike into the very heart of the Big Miami Reserve. At the 1838 treaty, the Miami had agreed to leave, but Congress was not forthcoming with funding for a removal plan for another treaty. Undeterred, the War Department dispatched Samuel Milroy and Allen Hamilton unofficially to the annual annuity payment at the Forks of the Wabash in Huntington, Indiana, in November 1840, to see how much money the tribal leaders would take for the rest of the reserve. The Miami also agreed to a timetable to move their tribal government to Kansas. From there, they were eventually moved again to Oklahoma. Tribal members receiving grants of land at treaties was a long-established practice. Both Miami Chief John Baptiste Richardville and his son-in-law and successor as civil chief Francis LaFontaine had extensive portfolios of land throughout the Wabash Valley. And at the 1840 treaty, 8 new sections were assigned to them both, one of which was destined to be the county seat of a brand new county. Only one of Richardville's sections from the 1840 treaty was in Howard County, the area that is today the reservoir. This land was eventually sold privately. Chief LaFontaine's surveyed section was strangely shaped, weirdly weighted to the south side of the Wildcat Creek, reasons for which we will explore shortly. There is a prestige and commercial advantage to a county seat. It's the center of the judiciary and commerce, and county life, at least in the early days, revolved around the courthouse square, with business and culture radiating outward from within. Plus, Indiana state law dating to 1824 stipulates seats of justice for new counties should be in a position central and permanent. The Fort Wayne banker and Indian agent Allen Hamilton was directly involved in every aspect of Indian removal from the state, most notably as part of the Commission to Extinguish Indian Title in Indiana. And in fact, this very phrase is part of the legislative record, forever a part of Richardville County's origin story. As the unofficial representative for the United States at the 1840 treaty, Hamilton was no doubt fully aware that the residue of the reserve is going to be carved into a county. He only needed to look at a map to see where the optimum spot would be for the county seat, for what eventually was going to be the last named county in the state of Indiana. In our research, we find no correspondence between Hamilton and David Foster, but we do know Foster, in his own words, was well acquainted with Chief LaFontaine. Therefore, it's possible Hamilton had clearly prearranged that the one section of land would be secured for LaFontaine at the 1840 treaty. Not even a year would pass before LaFontaine deeded it to Hamilton, who then held on to it for 2 years and 2 months. Within that time, the residue of the Big Miami Reserve is full of squatters, and the Miami are being readied for a wrenching removal. On January the 15th, 1844, Richardville County is created by an act of the Indiana legislature. 2 days later, Allen Hamilton transferred the title for Reserve Number 6 to that cabinet maker from Virginia who, along with his wife and 7 children, had been living near Kokomo's village since 1842. Government records show David Foster had a debt claim against the Miami tribe, and the land transfer from Hamilton may have been part of the settlement of that debt. The January the 15th Act assigned 5 locating commissioners to meet at John Harrison's house on the second Monday in May. Just 2 days after arrival, they had the signed title bond outlining David's donation for the seat of justice. This document included the detailed boundary lines for 40 acres on the north side of the creek. On May the 15th, 1844, Richardville County is underway. By 1846, Indian title has been extinguished and many Miami were being rounded up for removal. In December 1846, the government surveyors are working their way through the reserve, cataloging the features of the fertile land all along the Wildcat. This enlargement from the 1846 survey reveals fascinating details of the land just west of the unincorporated Kokomo Township. Early historians write that the north side of the creek was a forest and a swamp. LaFontaine's section was surveyed under his direction in 1841, and the shape is consistent with Indian presence. It includes as much of the Wildcat water source as he could fit into 640 acres, and in fact the overage is noted. David and Elizabeth's own daughter told the Kokomo Tribune in 1927 that her parents told her that the Indian village with the headman named Kokomo was on the high ground about a quarter of a mile south of the creek, near where Main Street now runs. Yes, the village on the Wildcat in 1846 was still an Indian community. But when this map was drawn, that community was being torn apart. Regarding their removal, many Indian traders and even influential Hoosiers at least tacitly supported efforts to keep the tribes intact and living here. Generally for a very simple reason: profit. The Indians were getting annual annuity payments. White traders peddling their goods could even be reimbursed by the government for debts the Indians couldn't pay. Now, less than half of the Miami people were actually removed. But for those who were, well, imagine if your family history included the record of being displaced and dislocated from land you have lived on for hundreds of years. Most white settlers wanted the Indians gone, but we have a primary source record that may allow for a different story about the village on the Wildcat. Government records reveal 3 petitions to the United States Congress requesting that certain Miami Indians not be forcibly removed from their homes and their communities. A successful request was the family of Makunsakwa, Frances Slocum, and in fact Congress in 1845 exempted her entire village from removal. In July 1846, Congress denied a petition filed by 291 citizens, meaning settlers, in Indiana, who had requested that certain members of the Miami tribe be permitted to remain on their reserved lands. The third petition is the new story for Kokomo. Howard County was not included in the federal census until 1850, but the state census in 1845 shows 444 white males over the age of 21 in Richardville County. 1/4 of those white males were emphatically on the record with their application that 10 Miami Indians be allowed to purchase and sell public land as citizens. What is their motivation? Well, we don't know. The complete record shows the petition request was for the Indians to not be removed, to receive their annuity payments here, and to be able to purchase and sell land.
So we have more questions than answers. But as we recognize the 175th anniversary of our county, we have new primary sources and 2 individuals by name, David Foster and Chapin Dosia, representing 2 cultures, striving to be one community at the village on the Wildcat.